This is a Dutch Model 1871/88 Beaumont rifle. I won this recently at an auction for pretty cheap. It was made in 1877, and it started life as a single-shot black powder rifle firing an 11mm cartridge. In 1888, due to advancements in firearms technology, the Dutch added the Vitali magazine to their stock of existing rifles. It holds 4 rounds of the same cartridge and features a magazine cutoff. And that's what makes this the Model 71/88. As you could see, it's in relatively poor condition, and it's in need of a restoration to get it back to shooting condition, as well as to preserve it for the future. And that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. Let's start by taking a closer look at the markings. 245T is the serial number. They numbered these in blocks of 1000, followed by a letter, so this isn't a very low serial number. Instead, it's around 20,000. The rifle is all matching from what I can see, even the bolt head and the bolt body. Even the Vitali magazine, which was added later, is matching as well. On the barrel is another serial number, 2343. I saw other examples of Beaumonts where this number differed from the 3-digit number, so this might be something that the Dutch did for whatever reason. If you know, add a comment down below. But this same number is also on the butt plate here. Also on the butt plate, this date shows when the rifle was converted to the Vitali magazine, which looks to be in 1889. Back to the receiver, there should be a manufacturer marking around here. P. Stevens and Mannlicher made the majority of these. Smaller amounts were made by the Suhl Consortium in Germany and JFJ Bar in Delft. I'm not sure if there is a marking here underneath the rust, but down on the side of the buttstock, this roundel has a prominent W in the center for King William III of the Netherlands. I can make out the year down below, 1887 for the year of acceptance, the same as the manufacturing year in this case. But above, it's faded. I can maybe make out a D here for Delft. In my limited research, it seems like Delft-made rifles weren't marked on the receiver, so this would make sense. This is what the cartouche looks like compared to the much more common P. Stevens on the bottom. Now to check the function. The bolt is easy to operate. It snags when it's nearly open, I think due to the shape of this track that the screw for the bolt head rides in. You can see the bolt head doesn't rotate with the rest of the bolt, pretty common for rifles of this era. The magazine follower works well. This lever on the other side is for the magazine cutoff. You can see how it operates, lowering one of the feed lips to prevent cartridges from being picked up by the bolt. This is missing the ejector, which should be right here. I read that that's common on these rifles, and it will function without it. Next, I'll inspect the bore condition. As an old black powder rifle, I wouldn't be surprised to see rust and pitting. Looking at it, I can see rifling almost all the way down the bore. I'll reserve judgment because it's very dirty, and I can't tell if I'm looking at dirt and fouling or rust and pitting. The wood stock is pretty clean and looks solid at first glance, but actually it's cracked on either side of the magazine. I'm not sure how common that is on these rifles, but it doesn't surprise me as this was originally designed to be solid here and later cut open to fit the magazine. Overall, while functional, the condition of this rifle is poor. There's areas of heavy rust, on the trigger guard and the butt plate in particular. The rest of the metal is better, but still covered in surface rust. The bore is an unknown variable. And whenever I encounter a rifle like this, I worry about the condition of the metal parts that I can't see, particularly under the receiver and the barrel, where moisture could have been trapped and create heavy rust. So the next step is to completely disassemble this rifle. I'm not too familiar with that process, so I'm learning as I go. First up is the bolt. I'll undo the screw for the bolt head. And then the bolt body comes out the back, and I can remove the bolt head. The extractor slides off the back of the bolt head. I'll decock the bolt to ease the spring pressure. And then I can check the firing pin protrusion. This looks good. It's enough to set off a primer. To take the bolt apart further, there's a large screw on the bolt knob. Unlike most rifles that have a coil spring for the firing pin, inside the bolt handle here is a V-spring, with the legs running like so, and the point at the top here. I expected this to come apart easily. Maybe it just needs more persuasion. And that got it. Now to unscrew the rest of the way. There's the spring. Or here's the spring. It fits in like this, with the short end against the bolt handle. The long end pushes against this collar on the firing pin. Like so. On the firing pin is a screw here. I think I'll leave this on, since it's not meant to be easily disassembled. Then at the front of the rifle, I'll slide out the cleaning rod. Actually, I'm not sure if this cleaning rod goes to this rifle. All the pictures that I've seen look different, and it's much shorter than expected, ending about 6 or so inches ahead of the magazine. I'll undo the barrel bands, which are on a bit tight. The front band has a slot on the bottom to fit around the front sight to come off. There's 2 action screws on the bottom. Since this one is a wood screw, it might just be for the trigger guard. The front is a machine screw, and with it out, you can pull off the trigger guard. This here is the end of another screw, which comes out the top. Then I can carefully lift off the stock. The magazine is sandwiched between the action and the stock. It slides out as a unit. Looking at it, the screw at the back here is the one also holding on the trigger guard. There's these arms on either side that look to be holding in the follower. At the front of them, there's a pin. I'll try and push them out. And then the follower comes right out. The spring is just threaded through a small hole on the bottom of the follower. The inside of the magazine body looks clean. No hidden rust in here. Looking at the underside of the action and the barrel, they look good. There's some rust spots, but it looks like it will come off easily without there being too much pitting underneath. Going down the barrel, it's mostly clean, but there are some more areas of rust here and there. There's one more thing to inspect, and that is the cracks in the stock. Looking inside, I don't see much here at all. The majority of the cracks look to be on the outside, so they should be easy to repair later on. With the action stripped, I'll scrub the bore. I will clean the rest of the parts, but I want to start here as the before and the after should reveal itself. Then I can get a better idea of what I'm working with, and whether this rifle will be a wall hanger or a shooter like I'd like it to be. I'm using an oversized brush. I think it's for a 20 gauge. This should knock loose any dirt or rust inside. And then I'll follow it up with cleaning patches. Time to see how it looks. And wow, it's so shiny I can't even get it to show on camera. I'll close the aperture to let less light through. And wow, again. Before I could barely make out any rifling. Now it's like it's almost brand new. Or at least what I would consider fantastic condition for a rifle that's almost 150 years old and shot corrosive black powder for most of its life. With that out of the way, there's still a few more small things to disassemble. I'll get them apart before giving all the parts a cleaning. First up is the magazine cutoff. Then the trigger. And then the rear sight. Now to the parts that are still on the stock. For the sling swivel, I'll clean out the screw slots before unscrewing. The bottom butt plate screw comes out easily enough. However, this top one is stuck. I'll move the stock to the vise. And with it held securely, I can apply more force down on the screwdriver and then turn using the pliers for more leverage. The butt plate looks decent inside. Usually this is the rustiest part on a rifle. While the stock is still in the vise, there is a metal plate still on the bottom of the stock. I'll thread in the action screw and then give it a few taps. There it is. Last are the two band springs. There's a small hole on the other side. I'll drive it out with a punch. Then I can twist it out. The front one isn't moving at all, and oops. The pin on the band spring broke off, leaving just a small stub. Looking at the one that came out in one piece, this isn't very surprising. On this, it's just as rusty and misshapen. We'll see later on if this is enough to hold the front band on. If not, I'll need to track down a replacement. And now with everything apart, I'll be boiling all of the parts to convert the red rust into bluing. The first step in that process is to degrease all of the parts. Water alone doesn't remove oil, dirt, or grime. If those are left on the parts, they'll provide a coating that prevents the rust from properly converting during the boiling. I'm using tools that won't damage the metal's finish, a wooden popsicle stick, and plastic bristle brushes. Now to begin the conversion process, from red rust to bluing. Outside I have all the parts except for the action in a pot. I'll add water. Then turn on the gas and light the burner. This tube will sit on top of the pot and hold the action. I'll carefully lower it down. Once the water is boiling, I'll set the tube on top. The steam from the boiling water in the pot will travel up through the holes drilled in the bottom of the tube, filling it with steam, which vents out the top. After about 40 minutes, the parts have been subjected to the water and heat long enough. I'll remove the action from the steam tube. Back inside, the water evaporates off of the hot parts quickly. You can see what they look like after being converted. There's not much change yet, but that will come soon. The next step is to cart off the loose rust. For that, I'm using this wheel mounted on an electric motor. Its bristles are thin and soft, more like steel wool than a typical wire wheel. I'm only giving the parts a light surface brushing to remove the rust loosened by boiling. The carding wheel can't reach every surface. For areas like the inside of the barrel bands, I'll use steel wool. After carding, I'll give all the parts one more cleaning by soaking them in kerosene. For the barreled action, I have another tube, this one capped at the bottom. It's smaller, but the action just barely fits in. Actually, I have to push it down a bit. Then I'll fill it with kerosene. I found that a long soak isn't necessary with the kerosene, so after about an hour I'm removing all of the parts. And the barreled action as well. After being in the kerosene, the metal is squeaky clean. With a blank slate, it's time to add oil to preserve the finish. This is non-detergent oil that doesn't contain any metallic additives. I found it sold as air compressor oil. I'll give all of the parts a heavy coat, making sure that it reaches and covers all of the bare metal. In addition to pouring the oil over the action, I'll be sure to wipe the barrel down with a rag as well. I found that this is the step in the conversion process that produces the greatest results. Any rust spots that may have been turned brown by cleaning and boiling will now turn black. I'm going to let the metal absorb the oil for a while I turn my attention to other matters. And that is the stock. It's time to fix the cracks on either side. Like I said earlier, it's cracked in this area likely due to the cutout for the magazine. I'll need to clamp them closed, and for an irregular shape like this, an exercise band works very well. But I don't want to crush the already weakened wood. To prevent that, I made this block that fits in like so, to fill the hole and provide support for the clamping. To provide the bond, I'm going to use an epoxy. I want to use a syringe to push it into the cracks. First, I'll find points at which I can for either crack. For the epoxy, I have two variants of Acroglass, gel on the left and original on the right. The difference is the viscosity. The original is thin, and hopefully it will be able to be pushed deep into the cracks. That's what I'll use. I'm trying to make do with what I have on hand, which is an infant medicine syringe, though the tip is larger than I'd like. Still, I'll use it to push the epoxy into the areas identified earlier. For the longer of the two cracks, I'll carefully spread it apart and epoxy in here as well. No surprise, but the syringe isn't working as well as I hoped, so I'll work the epoxy in with a pick. Then I'll press the wood close to be able to remove any excess epoxy. I don't want it drying on the outside of the stock. Then I'll add the block. Then wrap around the exercise band, pulling it tight with each pass. To hold the end, I'll add a clamp. And then I'll leave it at least 24 hours to cure. With such a long cure time, I'm moving back to the metal. I'll wipe the excess oil off of all of the parts. Now with all of the oil off, I can inspect the parts closer. There's more small parts with matching serial numbers. I haven't found anything resembling a serial number that isn't matching. Here's a better look at the markings on the butt plate. The matching number that I'm calling a barrel number, and the year of the magazine conversion. There's these Crown D stamps, which make me think that this rifle was made by Delph. A number of other parts have this same stamp, but the magazine, which was added later mind you, is stamped Crown Z. After disassembling the rifle, I realized I didn't see a cleaning rod retainer. Turns out that this hole in the front of the magazine body is threaded to hold the cleaning rod. A previous owner scratched his name on the inside of the butt plate and the bolt handle. I've blurred it for privacy reasons. Interesting, though I am glad they did it on areas that are hidden. But most of all, I can take a look at the results of the conversion process. The light surface rust has been turned into a deep blue black. The pitting left by the heavier rust remains, scars of this rifle's past. Most importantly, any active rust is stopped in its tracks, and this rifle will survive as is for many years to come. Before reassembly, I'll see how the stock is. Sometimes the smallest cracks are the hardest ones to repair. The inside looks good. This crack just had a little bit of epoxy staining it. It'll wipe away easily with alcohol. This one is still a bit proud of the surface, but I don't feel any movement. As for the rest of the stock, there's still loose rust where it was contacting the rusty barrel. I'll clean those areas. It just scrapes away. Under the butt plate is another area with loose rust to remove. The rest of the stock is in great condition. I can get started reassembling. While doing so, I'll point out some things that I didn't mention or notice when I was taking everything apart. There's no springs or indents to hold the rear sight in position. Just this tab that slides in and out, maybe as a setting for a battle sight. For the magazine cutoff, the extension on the far right serves as a spring, fitting into one of two detents. The trigger is a single-stage design with a flat spring. Something tells me that this will have a very heavy trigger pull. For the magazine, I'll thread the end of the spring through the small hole in the follower. I've always wondered why the Vitali magazine is shaped the way that it is. I thought that it was Victorian design, but it's pure function. This square track is for the legs on the follower, and behind it, the rounded part is for the coil spring, which also explains the shape of the bottom of the magazine. As for the bolt, I'll make sure the firing pin is decocked. Then I can add the V-spring. I'll get the legs into position, then pivot it back. On the removable part of the bolt handle, there's a ramp that fits into the same slot as the leg of the spring. This actually helps a lot to get it back together. Cocking the bolt is pretty hard. There's not much to grab onto. The bolt head stays separate for now. I'll add the extractor. And then set aside the screw that holds them together. Now to bring in the stock. This plate is a tight fit. Then the magazine slides in from the top. Unlike most rifles, the trigger guard can be added now. This front screw will hold both it and the magazine. Since the other screw goes into wood, I'll add paste wax to it. Paste wax serves as a lubricant for screws going into wood. I'm not adding any oil to the threads and metal parts, since those are still coated in oil from the conversion process, but every screw should have something for lubrication and for ease of removal later. Now to mate the action to the stock. There's only one screw on the rear tang. The barrel bands hold the front end. I'll slide them on, but not all the way just yet. Like the screws, I added wax to the band spring. I want to be able to remove this in one piece later if I need to. The front band spring, the broken one, I was hoping would still be able to hold the front band, but I'm not so sure. There is some space under the end. I'll add a small spring in order to apply some pressure outwards. I think that will work. If not, I'll try and find a stronger coil spring before tracking down a replacement band spring. The last part is the bolt, the body through the back, and the bolt head at the front. Once the screw holding them together is tight, I can test the function. Here's the completed rifle. The general appearance is much better than before. The surface rust is gone, transformed into bluing. It's still missing the cleaning rod. The one that came with it isn't correct. Maybe later on I'll try making one, or wait and see if I can find an original. But more pressing is my desire to shoot this. In loading cartridges for this rifle, there's two main challenges, and one that I'm sort of creating for myself. The first is the brass. Like many old black powder cartridges, brass isn't available and typically has to be converted from something else. In my research, 5090 sharps is what most people use. The challenge is how to convert a straight-walled cartridge like this to a tapered bottleneck cartridge like needed. But that is a challenge for another day, because recently at a gun show I stumbled across this. These are cases for the Beaumont. They are turned, once machined from a cylinder of brass instead of drawn and formed like most of the cases available today. They're less durable and a lot more expensive, but they are what I was able to find. The second main challenge is just how to load and then reload these cases. I didn't mention it a second ago, but dies just aren't available. At least not off the shelf. They can be custom ordered for a significant cost. The alternative that I've seen is to neck size the brass using pistol dies. So that's what I have here, a set of 45 Colt dies. Later on, the sizing and the expanding dies can be used to reload these cases, but since I'm starting with preformed brass, I'll just need the seating die. The third challenge, the one that I'm creating for myself, are the bullets. The Beaumont actually fires very standard size bullets, .457 or .458 diameter, which are typically used with 4570. The problem is that I don't have anything that shoots 4570, and thus I don't have a mold for that size. I do, however, have the mold used for 11mm Mauser, which measures .446. Something that I've been wanting to experiment with in that rifle is paper patching the bullets. I haven't yet since the throat in that rifle is very tight, and I need something smaller. But that is perfect for this. I can paper patch these bullets to bring them up in size. I realize that this isn't an ideal material, and that my technique and precision is likely very poor. But like I said, this is my first experiment into paper patching. If you have any tips or tricks, put them down in the comments below. You can see how the paper shrinks as it dries. With the patch it measures .452, not quite up to the .457 needed, but I've read that people keep their bullet diameters a few thousandths smaller than the bore when patching. Again, let me know down below. From there, loading is just like any other black powder cartridge, starting with belling the case mouth. Here's 10 rounds completed and ready for the range. Here goes the first shot. You can see that it doesn't eject the spent brass. This time I'll try loading 2 cartridges. Just making sure it's going to feed correctly. This time it ejected. Looks like the second cartridge kicked the brass out. I'll try again with 2 rounds to see if it ejects. No, this time the rim got caught on the case mouth of the second cartridge. Unfortunately, with only 10 cases to shoot, I didn't want to fully load the magazine, so trying 2 again here. The case got caught again this time. Here you can see where we're aiming for this target stand on the 50-yard line. But I'm not going to show the target because honestly, there's nothing there. I don't know if it was the sights, which I had all the way down, or the undersized bullets, but there were no hits. Regardless, all 10 rounds fed just fine, and all 10 rounds fired. I'm happy with that. Accuracy is something that could be chased later, most likely with the proper bullets. I enjoyed paper patching, but I can experiment more with that on a rifle that I know how it shoots. On this one, I'll order a 457 bullet mold, and I can experiment with converting the 5090 brass that I originally intended on using with this rifle. Those are my next steps, but for now, it's a good feeling to bring a rifle back to its former glory in a way that preserves its past, but also ensures that it lasts for generations to come. Thanks for watching.